So I was in jail at one point in time for 60 days, and I went undercover. I didn't do anything wrong. A lot of you are saying, oh, she was in jail. Yeah, I was actually in jail. And I actually chose to go to jail because I had been impacted by a situation in my family where I lost my daughter to the system. She had gone to college at the age of 16, and by the age of 18, she was incarcerated. She in fact was guilty, but in her guilt, she really was over-sentenced, in my personal opinion. She was over-sentenced because she had only done one crime in her entire life. She was riding in a car, driving a car, and basically somebody else was doing the robbing. And so she was found guilty. She was sentenced to 10 years, mandatory minimum. And that's kind of over crazy sentencing when it's your very first time, you're 18 years old, and you got away with a whopping $27 in Mexican pesos and a fake Louis Vuitton purse. So for me, I had to figure out what in the world is causing this. Why would she go to jail for such a terrible thing, or for such a non-terrible thing like that? And why would they give her such a terrible sentence of 10 years, mandatory minimum? And if you don't know what that means, that basically means that when you're sentenced mandatory, that means you have to do your entire time from start to finish. There is no getting out early. There's no good behavior. You're in, you're in. So I couldn't sleep. I couldn't rest at night knowing that this had happened to my daughter. And I couldn't understand some of the things that she was telling me about the conditions of the prisons, about the bad things that were happening in there, about the women who were getting raped by the guards, about the drugs that was inside of the prison, about the non-rehabilitative things that were happening. So I decided I'm going to go in myself and I'm going to see it for myself. So A&E basically gave me the opportunity to come in and to visit the prison, not as a person who just got to go home at night, but an actual inmate. As you can see me right there, that was when they first booked me in, and I had to carry my own bed, because that's your bed, into the cell. And I'm a bit of an older woman, you know, with a little bit of a knee issue, and I'm going to be 55 tomorrow. So to carry the bed and sleep on metal beds, that just was not my thing. That wasn't my thing. And that was number one, the first problem. Can we get a decent bed around here? Because just because we've done something wrong, we are in there to pay the price, yes. But do you have to be treated like an animal? I would say yes, that's how they treat you in there. The next slide is just kind of me, you know, looking at the crazy women that were in there and some of the things that were just going on in there. It was just a lot to fathom, I can tell you that much. You know, I saw fights. I saw heroin for the first time in my entire life being administered by one of my bunkies. I saw a lot of things. I saw women in there who just didn't pay a ticket, a traffic ticket, and had a warrant for their arrest and was in there for 2 years because they could not afford to get out. They did not have bail. So here you've got real criminals who were absolutely guilty. Then you have people who've made mistakes. And then actually there were some people in there who were innocent. And this was all mixed together. What I noticed when I was in there is that there are 3 different types of people. The first type of person is someone who's absolutely guilty. They did it. We should be protected from them and they should be under the jail. It's those type of people. Then I also met the type of another person who makes a mistake and they will never go back again because they've learned their lesson. And once they're out, they'll never go back. But they made a mistake. And then there's people who are just not guilty. They just didn't do it. They were wrongfully charged and accused of something that they absolutely did not do. So as I started to consume all of this information, I realized that there's something that I need to become in this society, and that's the consciousness of this society. The consciousness of this society, meaning that I needed to begin to talk to people about what I saw with my very own eyes, and I needed to begin to share the journey of incarceration with people who may have never come across this, such as myself. I didn't know anything about incarceration. I had no friends, I had no family, I had never experienced that a day in my life. Here I am working, because I own an advertising agency, and I also own a production company, a television production company. Here I am working with President Obama for his campaign, doing a commercial with A-list celebrities in Los Angeles, thinking I am at the pinnacle of my career. And then I get this call. My daughter's crying and she's telling me, Mom, I have done something and I need an attorney and you gotta help me. Imagine that. You're living at what you think is your pinnacle, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're brought down to the least common denominator. this can happen to you. It can happen to your family. And so as the consciousness of this society, I just feel chosen to be the one to tell you more about it. So I'm glad you're here today. I'm glad you're here today. Let me tell you how the pandemic actually affected and is affecting incarceration right now. During the beginning of COVID, the prisons and jails, and even before that, have been suffering overcrowding like you would not believe. There are people in there, as you can see. This is a local prison in Indiana, a local jail in Indiana, and these are all men in there. Could you see yourself in there? Would you want to be in one of those bunks? It doesn't matter whether you're guilty or not. Let's lose the thought or process of they're guilty, they deserve it. They may deserve it, true enough, but the thing is we have a responsibility for the welfare of those who go in, because eventually they're going to come back out to society. So if we don't get them in there and do exactly what we're supposed to do, and that's rehabilitate them, they're going to come out and they're going to recidivate, or they're going to do the same thing or something different and go right back in again. So is the system doing what it's supposed to do? I'm going to say no. It is not doing what it's supposed to do. It's not rehabilitating. You can't rehabilitate people when they're in a situation like this. It's not possible. It's just not possible. So what happened was during the beginning of COVID is more than 500,000 people actually got contracted COVID, and thousands and thousands and thousands of them died. And they died because there was no way to separate people. There was no clean conditions. They didn't even have ways to wash their hands around there without asking, can I wash my hands? So imagine the way we were able to wash our hands, keep ourselves covered and stuff like that. That wasn't happening in the prisons. So what happened from that is that they offered then a mass release. And so in this mass release, it could be that justice might have been starting to get served at that point. And when I say that, I'm saying that we need to think about the way we incarcerate people. If you have a ticket, I keep going to that because I know so many people that have actually gotten a ticket, forget to pay it. What if you forget? And then there's a warrant out for your arrest, and whoop, you get another ticket, or you get stopped and you get arrested. And now you're stuck in there. And let's say, for instance, it was during COVID and you just lost your job. You didn't have any money. You could have been that person that's stuck in there until they get around to you a couple of years later, because everything's so crowded. It wasn't fair. So what they had to do was they had to realize that they had to release some of these prisoners in order to reduce the population, stop the spread of COVID. And so what they did was between March and June, over 100,000 people were released from state and federal prisons. They were all nonviolent, no threat to society. The majority of them were men and women who were not yet found guilty or nonviolent in any way, shape, or form. Some of them just couldn't post bail, just like I said. They weren't the worst of the worst at all, and they were not housed in any form of a maximum security prison or jail, and they were not on death row. So, I mean, how many of you agree that they should have been let out during that time? Does anybody agree? I see a few of you. I appreciate that. At least that's good. Consciousness coming to you. For those of you who didn't raise your hands, look back at yourself and think about when you were a kid. Think about the things that you did and have not done in this life. Think about like when I was 18 years old and I did the things that I did. I should probably be in trouble. I should probably be in trouble. The only difference between what I did and what they did is I just didn't get caught. I just didn't get caught. Now, I'm not a bad girl. Don't look at me like you're crazy. I mean, I did go to jail, undercover, like an idiot, but I'm not a bad girl. I'm just not a bad girl. What I am is I was just a girl who was out there trying things. I mean, I did drugs when I was younger. I smoked a little pot. I snorted a little cocaine. I partied. I did all the things that we shouldn't have done at the age of 18, 19, 20, 21. I drank before I was legal. I DUI'd several times and drove, but I never got caught. And by the grace of God, I never killed anybody or hurt anybody. So just kind of deep down and dig a little dig a little bit more and maybe reconsider what was happening and what is happening. You know, COVID behind bars on every level was death, no matter how you look at it. And if you go to prison, or if someone is sentenced to jail or prison time, what we're saying as a as a society is that we're putting you inside so that you can serve and do the time that you need to do for what you did wrong. And when you come back out, we're going to say your debt has been served to society. Does everybody agree that that's the way jail and prison works? That's the way it's supposed to work, right? That's the way it's supposed to work. But what's happening is people were dying inside and given death sentences when they came in just because they caught COVID, because they may have made a mistake. And what if they were innocent? But what if they were guilty? Nevertheless, some of us are not the big judge. There's only one upstairs, and then the one that sits with the gavel. So I would just suggest that maybe we consider that we need to do something about this. For policymakers, for a short term, increased use of clemency, parole, expansion, and other legal mechanisms to depopulate the prisons and the jails. If you are a policymaker, help to reduce the numbers in prison and jails, because that's where it's got to start. For the long term, rethink about how we use incarceration in the country. We're using it unfairly to put away black and brown individuals. We're using it by far unfairly for that particular population of people. For the regular old folks like me and like some of us in the room, have a little empathy versus sympathy. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for what happened in my life or in my family's life or my daughter's life or anyone's life if you know anybody who has been incarcerated. As a matter of fact, how many of us know somebody who's been incarcerated, who is incarcerated, or is on their way to go to court to get incarcerated? Anybody? Look around. Just leave your hands up. Look around. Look at the room, people. If you look at the room, you're going to see that over 70% of the people raise their hand in here. So we're not strangers to what's happening here. We're not strangers. But what we are is we need to become more empathetic. Or what we need is we need to become more empathetic. We need to have an understanding of if it were me, what would you want somebody to do for you if you made a mistake and you had to come back out to the free world and try to get back into society and can't get a job because you have the F on your report card? You can't get a house. You can't find anywhere to live because you can't pass the application process. What about realize it's not just their problem, it's all of our problem. Just like COVID, when we said we're all in this together, it's the same thing with the world of incarceration. We are truly all in this together. And I could go on and on and on, but my time is almost up, so I want to say that we're in this together because if you look at it financially, you're paying for it. You're paying for it. I'm paying for it. We're all paying for it. And so we're in this together. There's more ways that we're in it together, but let's look at our pocketbooks first. We're there first. And then don't just say something, do something. Like, for example, I feel like I did something when it came down to my daughter. First of all, I went to jail to find out what was going on. I tried to figure out how can I make a difference and how can I begin to talk to people to help make change. The second thing I did was I got her out of jail 4.5 years early. So she got out in just over 6 years. By the grace of God, we were able to really fight the system in Georgia, really get the district attorney there to determine and make a decision to give her, which she was only the second person in Georgia, in this county, to ever break a mandatory minimum. It was because I did something. I didn't just talk about it. I did something. I got involved with the right people at the right time, and by the grace of God, it worked. So you can do the same. You can do the same. If it's just your neighbor, you can help somebody. So my daughter, she's been out, and she's been doing quite well, but she has a little something she wants to share with you guys, and I have a video here that I'm going to just quickly play. She doesn't like to talk publicly, and she's denied every media interview that has come to her. The New York Times, the Essence magazine. I could go on and on and on about all the people, but today she wanted to do this specifically for you guys. She wanted to tell you what it's like. Hey, Marlise, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, so the people want to know, what was it like to come out of prison and what was it like to integrate back into free society? And how did it feel with your family, with your friends, with the people you left on the inside and knowing what you were facing coming back out after the time you spent?
It wasn't easy. It was a very lonely road. There's not a lot of help that you get when you first get out. People just kind of throw you out there and expect you to just reintegrate or reassociate back into society. without any help, and they don't take into consideration that it takes a huge toll on your mental health. They try to give you therapists, they try to give you people that can help you and talk to you through it, but they don't. It's hard to talk to somebody that doesn't really understand what's going on. But it's different. It's not comfortable, especially when your mother has been like on 60 days in or on different TED Talks. So pretty much everybody you meet knows that you've been to jail. So it's not an easy subject, especially when you want to just kind of forget about it. But it can be done. There's people that get out and they are able to move on. It does take a long time. It's not something that happens overnight. And I think that people need to understand that mental health is not something that just flips like a switch, because you have to go from being a free person to being a locked up individual and dealing with certain things to being a free person again. So it's very awkward and very different. And I definitely feel like we should have more people to help us through that transition.
So what do you think was your hardest challenge when you got out? I know you're saying mental health, and I understand that, but what would you say was the most difficult challenge that you faced when you got out?
Being around people was very hard. I had gotten used to being in my cell and just kind of being alone or dealing with a certain type of individual. And I came out to more prestiged individuals, and it was a little uncomfortable because I had to find my confidence again and be able to be comfortable around different types of people. But people were definitely the hardest, and especially since I just know I can't be the only person that wants to be like, hey, I've been to prison, just so you know, let's get that out of the table. And you lose a lot of relationships doing that. Like, a lot of people just be like, oh, okay, well, nice to meet you, goodbye.
I'm sorry to hear that, because I know for a fact I lived it with you, and I know it is in fact correct. What about, what would you say, what are you doing now? I mean, what have you done since you've been out? How long have you been out?
I've been out for 4.5 years. For the first couple of years, I didn't do much because it was really hard. I wouldn't say the first year, I didn't do much because it was really hard. And then I went to school for special effects makeup in New York, and I did that for a while. Then the pandemic hit, which didn't help. The pandemic was like when I was starting to feel normal again, and then boom, everything went downhill again. So now I currently go to school, and I worked a couple different jobs, but I've always been a waitress because it's not a lot of options. Now I currently go to school for visual effects and game design. So I'm going to be a 3D modeler. So I'm taking that special effects over to digital.
So do you think that people have the same opportunity as you when they get out? And do you think it's possible for people to move forward in life once they get out, or do you think it's more difficult?
No, people do not have the same opportunities I do. A lot of people have to come out to kids, or they have to come out to families that need their help. I am lucky enough that you don't need anything from me, and I can just focus on myself and myself alone. A lot of people don't have that luxury. They have to worry about their kids. They might have to worry about their mother. They got to worry about other external sources that are not helping them move forward, but hindering them. Especially since a lot of them come from Black or minority families where those issues come across. So it's definitely not easy for everybody.
I understand that. So first of all, I want to say I'm proud of you for one, taking what you did and serving your time and paying your debt to society. And I want to say thank you for standing up and accepting responsibility, and for trying as hard as you have tried since you've been out. So, kudos to you. I'm proud of you. And I want you to know that I love you, and that I believe in you, and that I know that society will begin to change someday, especially if we keep telling them our voices and we keep sharing with them what we've gone through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just take the time to find something in your heart and in your mind and in your spirit to consider that these people are still human. They still deserve a second chance, and in some cases, another chance, just like you've been given. That last slide just shows that what she looks like. It was kind of hard to see. She thinks she's Barbie. She thinks she's a little supermodel. So every time I turn around, she's changing her hair and stuff like that, just like her mother. But that's my daughter, Marlise, and we just want her to try to thrive, to try to thrive. She has another chance, and I thank you for giving me another chance.